It's an honor to be here. First and foremost, we'd like to thank His Highness, His Excellency Omar, Mohammed, and the entire WGS team for letting us join you today to talk about a fascinating topic that we can all relate to, the automotive industry, but within that, the premium market, the luxury space. I'm Tio. I'm a co-founder of a London-based hedge fund that exclusively focuses on investing in the secular opportunities and challenges that exist in the automotive, semiconductor, and AI universe, and how those are all converging. I'm very, very lucky to have two panelists up here with me as well, who I will introduce because I think they're both too humble to talk about themselves, and really thought leaders in their own right. Faisal, who's sitting beside me, is the Vice President and Managing Director of Lucid Motors. He's in charge of overseeing all of the Middle East, but also has a global perspective. And as I was learning more about Faisal, I thought what was fascinating was he's working at this disruptive, I wouldn't even call it a startup anymore, innovative automotive company and technology company, but he did spend 30 years in the traditional auto industry at industry titans like Ford, like GM, largest auto supplier in the world, Magna. Beside him, the name needs no introduction, but he wears many, many hats. We have Ferdinand Porsche, who also goes by Ferdy Porsche. Ferdy's great-grandfather founded Porsche. His grandfather invented the 911. But I think what's even more interesting about all of that is what Ferdy is doing today. Ferdy is the CEO of FAT International, which I'll let him tell you much more about. He's also a board member within the Porsche Group of companies. And more recently, he co-founded a company called FAT Karting League, which is revolutionizing the world of motorsport and making it more accessible for kids around the world as he looks to pursue a way to democratize the sport and give access to millions of kids worldwide to get into the sport. Before we go into what we hope is going to just be a dynamic conversation with these two gentlemen, just to level set and pick off what Anna was saying earlier, like the automotive industry, $3 trillion, right? Biggest single consumer market on the planet, going through tectonic shifts across the vehicle. Everything from how it's being propelled, to how you connect to the vehicle, and to how it drives. Within that, you have this $600 to $800 billion premium luxury market, depending on how you want to define it. That also is going through its own changes as well. In the premium market, think of any luxury car you can think of, like Swiss watches, right? Mechanically engineered, moving parts, all having to work perfectly together. We take the engine out, we put an electric motor underneath, and suddenly we have to rethink how we differentiate ourselves as a luxury brand. And maybe just starting on the status quo, guys, of the industry, and Faisal, maybe I can start with you. Talk to us a bit about maybe Lucid Motors, because not everyone in the room may not know as much as we've read about your brand. And how would you assess the competitive landscape today for Lucid and the premium space?
Thank you. Thank you for having me here. Actually, I will just talk about Lucid Motors, as you said. I think Lucid Motors is a California, Silicon Valley-based company. We are a technology company that really transferred into assembling and manufacturing cars with our first offering, the Lucid Air, which has won 3 years in a row now Luxury Car of the Year, but it's also the fastest 0 to 60 miles per hour car, and also longest range with 516 miles of range on a single charge.
1.9 seconds, right?
1.8 seconds.
Okay, sorry.
And if you just change the tires, you'll go to 1.7-ish. So I think, we're very proud of the technology that, we've been able to bring into the landscape. I think, me and we were both talking, and I think, we're going to get a little bit more into it, but I think there's a lot of collaboration that really needs to happen. And we auto guys, we're very proud of our products, but then we appreciate each other's products also, and we learn from each other. And I think for EV to be really successful, that collaboration really needs to happen, because there is 100 years of internal combustion engine legacy that is out there, and it's very hard to make the change, for the consumers. And that's why I think these type of gatherings are really important. Lucid is now coming out with the 7-seater SUV, the Gravity. First deliveries have started in North America pretty soon here, also in the region. So we're trying to really redefine and actually also broaden our product lineup. We do play in the premium and the luxury segment. And I think that is a much harder segment to really, to work with, because the demands of the consumers are, as you said, are very, very high. And, and then on top of that, you're trying to make the shift from internal combustion engines to EV. So, you have to be very, very good at it. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to survive.
For sure, that's great. And Ferdy, let's talk about, as an intro, FAT International, this 1 million person racing team you're trying to build, and just how you're trying to leverage your ecosystem to connect premium brands to the next generation of buyers.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for having us. It's been fun so far. I think I grew up on a bunch of car events around the world, right? Whether that's car fairs or Porsche Club North America or F1 races, all of that stuff. And so obviously I was kind of raised to be a fan of our own product. I was raised to be our own customer, basically. And in a sense, I always found the product itself super fascinating. But everything around it kind of lacked the enthusiasm that people would connect to the product itself. So a few years ago, I decided to revive an event in Austria that seemed like it was a lot of fun, and that went all the way until the 70s, which was an ice race, so a race on a frozen lake. And I revived it thinking it could be a way for the next generation to be connected to the car and to be brought into the car world, basically. Because I think that's what it's about for legacy brands, but also obviously for new brands. How do you get the next generation involved in all of that? So COVID came, I had a winter event, so we kind of thought, how do we take everything that's cool about this to the next level? And we actually found a brand called FAT International. It used to stand for Français Allemand Transit, and they used to sponsor the coolest race cars of the 80s, 90s, 2000s, and it kind of had exactly the spirit in the name itself that I created, or that we wanted to create with Ice Race. So that is what we do now. We're building a 1 million people race team. Tio spoke about the karting league. That is kind of the first actual tool that we have to mess with motorsports nowadays, because it feels like it's a sport that's only accessible to the top 1%. And with the karting league, we want to change that. We got the cost down by 96% for a karting season, and we're pretty sure the fastest drivers haven't raced yet.
And just on competition, we all love competition. Motorsport is built on competition. Faisal, what does it take to, you had so much experience before Lucid, right? This is not your first rodeo per se. What does it take to win in luxury, in the premium market? And how do you win that battle? Because I know your ambitions are not to sell 15, 20, 50,000 units. It's much bigger than that.
Yeah, I think. Look, for us, we started at Lucid Motors. We started off with a four-door sedan, that is more of a family car, but then competing, with the Porsche Taycans and Tesla Plaid. So I think that is, that was really done on purpose to kind of get the brand image established. But of course, as you said, I think we want to go into more volume product, and those are going to be coming out in the next year or so. You're going to see the Gravity, and then we also have announced the midsize with 3 top hats on a midsize CUV, cross, and an SUV that is going to come out. That's going to become more affordable, but still, premium and a luxury product. And I think Shilpa was just mentioning, to bring the affordability down. So I think that's really how you do it. We would definitely like to stay in the premium and luxury brand. What is so different between, let's say, Lucid? That's a question I get a lot, compared to General Motors, Ford, Fiat Chrysler, I think, or Stellantis now. I think it's the innovation. I think, when I moved from the traditional OEMs and when I moved to Lucid as a startup, I definitely saw the speed and the agility because you have your sandbox is it's not really as defined as a traditional OEM. So you think outside the box a lot more, and you have a lot of freedom to, do things that typically are already predefined in a traditional OEM that tells you not to do that. So I think that brings a little bit of the innovation down. That's definitely something that I think you kind of see that with the new product lineups that are now coming out. The pioneers in the new way of thinking were really, non-traditional OEMs, and I think the traditional OEMs really have the tool set to really jump on it and then catch up. And we're seeing a lot of that happening now in the industry. So I think that will be the biggest differentiator. How do we play and keep ourselves, ahead of the ball game? I think is in a luxury segment and a premium segment, it's always about getting vehicles, what to the demands of the customer, right? What is those differentiators? In some cases it's the performance, some cases, it's the luxury offerings and the material itself. Nowadays it's more about connectivity. Nowadays it's more about autonomous. Nowadays it's about what can the car do for you. Now with the AI, I think you're gonna start seeing this mixture form where you are gonna have the car as your personal assistant, and the car will be the computer or your phone that you can give it a lot of tasks, and the car will do it while you're driving it. So I think that's where you're going to see the biggest differentiator going forward.
For sure. I mean, Ferdy, just to loop you in, there's the competitive dynamics, but you and I talk a lot about, the status quo, almost the state of paralysis of premium brands today. They don't really know how to evolve what they should be doing, right? And I think we've talked about countless ways in which the premium brands need to evolve. Can you just share some perspective? We probably can go for 20 minutes on this, but just some of the ideas you have as someone who is, you're an architect, you're a creative, but you think very strategically about Porsche and its brands. So talk to us about how these brands need to evolve.
I think the one challenge all the brands have is basically the older generation that grew up seeing those cars go 300 for the first time, winning Le Mans, winning F1. That's kind of the start of all the auto glory, basically. So how do you translate that to the next generation? How do you make sure that the next generation is kind of excited about the same thing? Obviously, you do that through innovation, but I think you also do that through storytelling, through experiences, through really bringing people into the brand and closer to the brand. So for one easy example is you see all the auto fairs kind of slowly die and slowly pass away. So Paris Auto Show, Geneva Auto Show, all of these things, and brands pivot towards doing experiences and really explaining and showing the customers what they do. And I think it's a bit two-faced, right? You have to get the next generation excited without losing the existing customers. I think there is a growth potential there, and obviously, people want to have a very tailored experience, especially in the luxury sector.
For sure. I mean, at this World Government Summit, it's tough not to go to a panel or hear about artificial intelligence and how that's changing the world, right? And technology is very much associated with growth. I think something that's unique and we've all experienced in different ways as investors, owners, executives. Growth has been elusive in the auto industry forever. I remember 15 years ago, starting in this industry investing, people talked about the journey from 90 million to 120 million cars. We still sell 90 million cars. Nothing has really grown. Within that, you can then break the market out. And, the premium market feels like it should be a growth market. It should grow. Luxury should be an opportunity. But again, and there's a lot of this untapped potential. I mean, just some thoughts from both of you on, is this a growth industry within autos? Or really is it a story of, new players taking market share from old players?
I think in a sense there's for sure potential, right? Rich people and wealthy people in the world are becoming more and more, and if we're talking about premium and luxury, that's exactly the segment that we're talking about. And then also, I think the level of personalization and really tailoring the car and the experience of buying it, of owning it, to the next level, I think that's something where there's still a ton of potential, right? I think Porsche is very famous for choosing your own color and designing it. And if you are the first one to pick a specific color, you can even name it. And I think those are kind of like relationships between customers and brands that go a long way. And I think there's for sure some potential in that. Maybe not simplistically or just in terms of volume, but maybe more in terms of what you extract from one customer.
For everyone's benefit, PTS stands for paint to sample.
Exactly, sorry.
Probably the most impressive.
I think everybody here knows.
I know, but the jargon, right? It's probably the most impressive collection. If anyone has not visited the Porsche Build Your Own Car simulator, I would encourage you to do it. I unfortunately spend my nights sometimes and annoy my wife in customizing cars that I still dream about. Faisal, any thoughts from you on that topic?
Yeah, I think it's definitely, I would agree. I think, the potential is there, and I think it's going to happen because as OEMs are learning now, what that personalization really means, because, it's an personalization over generations has really changed, So it started off with colors and seats and headrests, and that still continues, but now you have personalization on the screens. It's more of a digital personalization. For example, in Lucid Air and Gravity now also we've enhanced it. When a driver sits down, the camera sees who it is. You have the profile set up. If it's the husband, the wife, or the 21-year daughter, they already have their profile all set. And that could have different colors on the screen. It could have the seat adjustment. So the first connection is through your phone or your key fob. Because everyone has assigned a different app on their phone. So all of this is going to really start to come, and it will build a story as we were talking about, and it's going to start differentiate your offering from the others. So I think that has to play a role in growing the market, because I think the new generation is really hooked onto that, and I think that will, gaming, AI, I think all of these are going to start coming into play. So it's exciting times. I think I would say next 5 years are going to be very exciting for automotive industry, especially in the premium performance and luxury segment as this thing plays out.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, this elusiveness of growth, right? I think to both your points, how do you monetize it? I remember when, it sounds so old, but we went from analog to digital UI in the vehicle, right? Every OEM would tell you, I'm going to be able to charge $200 a month for content in the vehicle. And as an investor, you'd ask, give me 10 examples. And they would just say, maybe a Spotify account, but hold on a minute, that's Spotify earning the $10 per month, not you, right? And I think the OEMs are really struggling with how they monetize, particularly the data in the vehicle and how you personalize with it. I mean, maybe Faisal, back to you on this. You guys have really engineered centralized compute architecture in the car, right? Over-the-air updates seamlessly. Do you have a path to monetizing through personalization or luxury features, or is it just you have to do it to compete? It's table stakes.
Yeah. To me, actually, in a luxury segment and premium segment, the possibility is a little bit less. I think when you go down to a regular, let's say a medium price car, I think you can do a little bit of that. But in the customers have, as I said, very high expectation when they're buying a Lucid or a Porsche or a Mercedes. Bentley. I think if you start asking them for subscription-based systems, I think there will be some negative that are going to come. So I think apart from subscription, there definitely could be many other ways, and you could have a concierge service like a 5-star, 7-star hotel that opens up a lot of things for you that are not available just because you are in an owner's club. So there is a lot of things that the OEMs are working on in the premium and luxury segment. But I think for us, really, we want a fun product to drive on the road, right? Yeah. And and make money off of the car at the end of the day.
Yeah. So I remember just at that point, a couple years ago, a German luxury OEM, not Porsche, tried to charge an over-the-air update to add 10, 20 horsepower to the vehicle, and the backlash, to your point, Faisal, was just immense, right? How can you charge me $80,000 for a car and then charge me for a software update to make it go quicker? I mean, just sticking to the element of growth and personalization. Ferdy, back to you on paint to sample has been a hit for Porsche, right? I mean, I think the challenge and bottleneck has been the ability to paint as many cars as you can. Just beyond paint, and if you think about some of the other competitors out there, talk more about driving revenue growth through personalization, seats. I mean, just talk to us about that opportunity, which can be so significant for a lower volume manufacturer of cars.
Yeah. I think that goes from the experience of buying it to the experience of speccing it to the experience of picking it up at the factory to obviously things at the car themselves, right? I think luxury cars or luxury brands in general are cultural brands. So I think the biggest value lies in people associating a type of culture, associating a sport, associating a lifestyle to their product. And I think just like making this world bigger around the actual product itself. You see this in the fashion industry also. I don't know, Prada is an example I like, but just because I like the brand. They have their own museum, they have their own sailing team. And I think you see that also with Porsche, for example, the whole racing part. I mean, we still do that or Porsche still does that to develop the brands and to learn from racing and then implement it in the actual cars. But I think it's also part of driving the culture around it and offering an ecosystem that you can be a part of versus just, here's your product, go drive around.
Yeah, I guess off-track, off-road engagement, right? To bring people more and more into the brands. I think an even more important topic, and this will touch on our experience in history, but the way forward is how do we engage the next generation customer more? I think we all should talk about our experiences with auto shows. I started my career in 2011 investing in automotives, and the Detroit Auto Show, the Geneva Auto Show, right? These were marquee events. They were the equivalent of Steve Jobs standing up on a stage and holding a phone, right? You had all the media there. You couldn't get a seat in the room. They're all almost dying. We no longer have a Geneva Auto Show. The one that bounces between Frankfurt and Paris is not well attended. Detroit has almost been replaced by CES, right? The Consumer Electronics Show. Why? Let's just start with, from our experience, like why have they died? Why have they disappeared? And what lessons can we draw from that?
You just mentioned Steve Jobs. I think the beauty of a keynote of his was that it was just his keynote, and he could talk about just his product. And I think maybe the OEMs don't want to be in a room full of 100 OEMs and kind of like talk about their competitive edge, but more so want to kind of build an experience and show their product being used, show their product in a setting that they choose versus just some hall that they're going to stand next to the other one. I think that's kind of that culture that brands build around them and that the customers also bring to the brand that they choose.
Yeah, I think, to me, I think the reason why they're dying is because the consumer behaviors are changing. The consumer actually likes to engage with the car, and I think the OEM wants to also present the vehicle in a very different way. I think, those having these stalls, that look very similar with, in size and the placement of the cars, I think it's almost like going to the gold souk in Dubai, right, where you have all the glitter right next to each other. In some cases it used to work, but nowadays I think consumer is very well educated. I think when they actually visit a Lucid's website or a Porsche website, they already know a lot about the product that they want to really look at. So they're looking at that, the end 20% of what, the questions that they have. And I think it has to be more engaging. You need to really grab them, and then you need to have a test drive, or you need to have a private showcasing of the vehicle. I think that brings the emotional attachment into play, rather than having a stall where the car is standing with someone. So I think that's why I think they're dying down.
I think it's also how we use media, probably, because I think a lot of the people are educated because they watch car videos, they watch their heroes take them around the track, and I think that's kind of a better place to show the car to journalists nowadays.
Yeah. I mean, you think, 10, 15 years ago, you used to buy auto magazines, remember, right? Read reviews in auto magazines, and then you'd want to see a physical version, so maybe you'd go to a show. What's fascinating about car shows, though, is, the last few years post-COVID, once China reopened, I had the opportunity to go to the China auto shows. It kind of oscillates between Beijing and Shanghai. There's record attendance at these shows. And when you walk around, and even last year, Xiaomi launched this, SU7 vehicle. It literally they're trying to make it look like the Porsche Taycan. But they had a 3-hour queue Ferdy, don't worry, They had a 3-hour queue to see the car. And then they really tapped into social media, which I think is an important topic. You had influencers, to your point, the car is just standing there. Influencers on there, live feeds from the actual show. I think there's obviously a huge opportunity to tap in through new social channels. I mean, how are you guys trying to do that at Lucid and, to Ferdy's point, connect with the audience in a non-traditional way? How do we do that?
Yeah, I think, look, the traditional way of advertising, I think, is no longer going to work, right? So you have to be influencer-based, YouTube presence, X presence, Instagram. For each market, it's a different social media that is being followed. And then, of course, you have your targeted segment of profile of personas of your consumers. You already know which product, who you're going after. And I think based on that, you kind of dial in and out of those, is it Facebook, is it LinkedIn, you have to be present on the social media side. You have to use the influencers. You have to have brand ambassadors that really, define the product that you're trying to sell. I think it's a combination of all of those things that will really come together for you to succeed and have an amazing marketing experience.
I think for us, I can say that from a FET international perspective and the events we do, but I think I can also say that from Porsche. The most important part is basically authenticity, and to put your car in a place. Like, the cool thing about car culture is everybody can discuss, right? You said your car is the fastest in a straight line. I said ours is the fastest in curves, which is what actually matters. But I think that's kind of the beauty of car culture, right? The moment you start putting people in a room, they can all relate about cars. They can all talk about it, and that's kind of the cool thing. That's the starting point that we have. And as you said in the beginning, it's one of the biggest industries, 90 million cars every year. So even looking at China, there is now a ton of new brands coming up, and for sure there's going to be enough space for multiple players. And obviously everybody has their own kind of field to tap into. But I think now from the Porsche perspective, having this authenticity of 76 years of racing, this heritage that you can tell stories of, and still obviously all the living legends that can tell this story, is obviously, I think, one of the best sales pitches.
I mean, we're almost at risk of sounding like everything that is old is bad, but it's not necessarily so, right? This is a unique industry with so much history, legacy, storytelling, nostalgia, and Ferdy, you're on the younger side, I think, of the three of us up here, but you talk a lot about connecting the new generation with the old, right? That whole retro approach. Can you just elaborate on that and how we can use that to really differentiate ourselves in this space?
I think Virgil Abloh said youth always wins, and I think that's kind of a cool thing. At the same time, I think learning from history and heritage, I think there's a beauty in having a way to connect with all of that, right? And so what we, like the FET events obviously live off of the people that bring all the cool old cars. They're mostly elder gentlemen because old cars are expensive. And we learn from them, right? And we bring youth culture to it in terms of music and fashion and art. And I think that's kind of the beautiful mix that gets us all creative and that inspires the next generation to be a part of the car, because what other product is there that you can bring a friend, that you can listen to music, that brings you from A to B, and that makes you look cool as cool as possible while doing that. I don't think there's many, maybe airplanes, but that's more expensive.
A question for you both in closing. I think it's very fitting given we're in the UAE, and it's been very inspiring for all of us, how forward-thinking this nation is. They have a 2071 vision that I've learned about, 50-year vision that the government looks at, 10-year phases, review it every year, really, really forward-thinking. So given you two should have a crystal ball, in that spirit, let's pick 2040. What does premium luxury personalization stand for 10, 15, 20 years out?
Yeah, I think the cars will definitely have some uniqueness, to it. If I have to go to the 2040, now right now we talk about range and all of these things. I think those are probably going to go away eventually, because every car company will have enough range. Maybe even bring the range down because infrastructure is going to start catching up, and when that happens, I think it will be the unique features of the car, the personalization. I think, to change the color of the car, very fast, maybe have technology. I think BMW tried this, right? So I think there are, I kind of see something like that, definitely, with the lights, with the paint, with the interior colors. Definitely, some unique features that make your car look different. Now, the tires used to be the number one thing that we used to use, in the rims, but I think it's going to go beyond that. Maybe it's a plug-and-play screens. I don't know. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to start coming up.
As an architect, I obviously kind of wear two hats, right? Because we kind of want to get rid of cars in cities, but I'm also from a car family and I love the car. I just think there is going to be a perfect, most efficient, most comfortable way of doing your travels, whichever travel that is. My grandfather once said that the last car will be a sports car, and I think that might be a cool comparison to what you said earlier. You talked about the Swiss watch industry and how that became electric, so kind of how that went to quartz watches, but nowadays we still all kind of aspire to have a cool Rolex that tells the time in a maybe ancient way, but it gives us a sort of sensation and connection to heritage.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, both of you, for today's panel. Thank you. Thank you.